Thank you. Counsel for the Government of Canada just brought up a document and showed it to the witness, and it was about tow trucks. It's against the rules, but I'm wondering if you would grant me leave to show this witness a single document which we haven't provided notice for, but which may assist him and which may assist the Commission in understanding how many tow trucks may have been available.
Well, I'm not sure mechanically how we can do this.
A few questions arising of that. One is, it is a document that exists in the Pardy database?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and are you able to provide the document ID number?
Yes, I am.
And Mr. Commissioner, obviously within your discretion, but no, the parties nor Commission Council haven't had an opportunity to review the document and see what it is. I'm not sure what it is, but one of the things that we can do is, once we know the numbers, have an opportunity to look and see what it is.
For what it's worth, Commissioner, I was going to ask for leave to introduce probably the very same document.
Okay. Is there any objection? Obviously, if the OPP seems to have no problem with it, I think it should just go ahead. If you can give the number so that we can then get it before the Commission.
Commissioner, can I just...
Yes.
My only comment would be if it's in relation to the questions I was asking, and because I wasn't given notice that it was going to be put to the witness, it may raise an additional question for me. I suspect I know what document it is, but I'm not entirely sure until I see it, obviously.
Well, if you want to follow up on it, you can ask at the time, and obviously I have discretion to allow that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. The document is OPP 401585. Can we just go down to the third page, the top of the third page, please? So here you can see an email, and can you just actually scroll up a little bit so we can see who the email is from? So this is an email from Rose DeMarco. Do you know her?
Yes, she is a Deputy Commissioner of Traffic Services and Operational Support with the OPP.
And it looks like this this email is being sent to somebody at the Solicitor General's office as well as the OPP Commissioner.
Yes.
And if we just scroll down a little bit, she says there are a total of 64 heavy tow companies in the province of Ontario. Do you see that?
Yes.
And I think this is what you were referring to before. She says companies who would provide service, 7, with 34 total heavy tow units.
Yes.
And if we just look down 2 lines, she says 10 companies waiting for callback from the 57 in total.
Yes.
Now, the document that we just saw from the Government of Canada was, I believe, dated February 17th, 2022. So that's some 4 days after this document.
Correct.
And it looks like perhaps in that time, the number of tow companies who are willing to provide trucks, or the number of trucks that they can provide, decreases.
It appears, yes.
And it could be the case, could it not, that the invocation of the Emergencies Act, which happened in between these 2 events, actually caused tow truck drivers or tow truck companies to become more reluctant to provide their services, or to put conditions upon their services, such as indemnification for damages?
It is possible, but I personally don't believe that, sir. There was a reluctance very, very early with tow companies to be engaged. As I mentioned, the OPS on February 9th were unable to get any tow companies to engage, to the point that they were going to use their own people. And I do believe there's even reference to getting the military to come in and tow some vehicles for them if needed. So while it may have had an impact, I think it was an issue. And I think that issue was connected broadly to the broader issue that we were dealing with in the public domain, namely the pandemic, this massive protests, and the unwillingness of some agencies to simply be engaged.
Well, it was an issue on February the 9th, as you say. And it was still an issue on February the 13th, but there were some trucks there. There were some
Yes.
34 trucks. Can you think of anything material that changed between the 13th and the 17th, other than the invocation of the Emergencies Act, which would cause fewer companies to agree to the OPP using their trucks or to providing services to the OPP?
I think the key comment that I think is appropriate for me on the tow issue is that we knew it was a contentious, our team knew it to be a contentious issue from the very start of our deployment. I was fortunate to have a team that I could just say, can you deal with this? And Kurt Richardson, MTO, and the folks in that email, right up to Deputy Commissioner DeMarco, took that off our plate. So they might be in a better position to answer that question. I simply asked for a tow plan, and can you give me people that have the capability to develop that plan? And I got a plan, and it worked.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let me change topics here for just a moment. We heard from your OPP colleague, Superintendent Patrick Morris, not long ago, that he thought some of what the media was reporting was problematic. Did you hear that evidence?
I did not hear his evidence, and I think I listened in on about 10 minutes of it as I was arrived in Ontario, looking to do some of my own prep, so I didn't spend a lot of time.
Are you aware that he testified that he read accounts of, for example, Russia being involved in the protests, and he found that to be
I
problematic?
think I may have read that somewhere, yes.
In your evidence today, you adopted a will say, and in that will say, you stated the media was not portraying what was on the ground. Can you tell us what your concerns were?
Well, it's just the things that were happening, and this protest group were incredibly well organized, in my opinion, and the narrative about what was happening in Ottawa was being controlled, was one-sided. And
Sorry, go ahead.
no, and that's the basis for that comment, because there was a lot of good things happening. You know, there's things that were going on within the protest group, that we heard about the bouncy castles and the prayer meetings in the mornings, but we didn't hear publicly about threats to people inside the perimeter who wanted to leave and they didn't want them to leave. We didn't hear about that publicly. Things of that nature. It's just but one small example of the narrative that was out there about, this is a family event. Bring your kids. There's a bouncy castle. We can have fun. Yet there were people within that red zone that wanted to leave and felt threatened and couldn't leave.
And you didn't think that was being accurately conveyed by the media?
It was not being conveyed at all, in my opinion.
What about something like what Patrick Morris testified to, that the protesters were being portrayed as extremists, and he found that to be problematic? Did you find that to be problematic as well?
I do, because I've been involved in the events in the past, from OAS summits to some of the G events, where we had a lot of extremist views. There was fringes of it with the two groups, I believe, that were around Nicholas and Waller and Rideau Sussex, maybe, were of concern, but they were not a major concern. But there's always that risk of escalation that you see from those extremist groups. It was the profile of the protester for this event was none like I've ever seen in my 36-year career. We had everything from grandparents. My first day in this assignment, I was shown a picture of two officers that had worked for me in the past, who were retired, who were in the crowd with the protesters. We saw children. We saw a lot of crestfallen police officers in the crowd, military, nurses. So it wasn't your normal group of people that you're dealing with. So I guess that's the point. Was there still concerns from our perspective on extremism? Absolutely. But we relied on and trusted the intelligence as it came in on that regard.
Thank you very much, sir. Those are my questions.